Guys, good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, across Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world, right here on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented today by Skooma Boutique Dispensary on April 20th. Yes, 420. Skooma Boutique Dispensary will have a second location up and running on Elleywood Avenue. We'll highlight our partnership with Greenberry's Coffee, Judah Whitcower, our director, by putting on screen a link for you to win free coffee for a year. Enter.greenberries.com. Enter.greenberries.com. You put your email address in the box, you can win free coffee for a year from Greenberry's Coffee, the longest running and most tenured local coffee roaster in Charlottesville and in Central Virginia, Sean and Roxanne Simmons. A lot I'm going to cover on today's program. There is significant interest in the Fitzgerald tire listing in downtown Belmont. Significant interest, significant activity. We'll highlight that listing on the Tuesday edition of the show. We encourage you to visit ilovecville.com right now, ilovecville.com right now, to get some background, some knowledge, and some intelligence on the Fitzgerald tire listing, a listing of tremendous potential. We will highlight what we think are the most iconic properties in Charlottesville, a topic that came up yesterday. I've ranked 10 for you in order for what I think are the most iconic pieces of real estate in the city of Charlottesville. Note, I'm taking the UVA properties, the Rotunda, Scott Stadium, and the John Paul Jones Arena off this list. UVA is Albemarle County and not the city of Charlottesville. If I included the Rotunda at number one, then the John Paul Jones Arena and Scott Stadium would have to also be included on this list. And those three properties would monopolize the top five, maybe 1, 2, and 3. I'm removing the UVA properties out of the top 10, and I will give you an updated 10 most iconic properties in the city of Charlottesville. Alex Urpí is our guest today, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. He will join us in 12 minutes. I'll get Alex Urpí, the Antonio Banderas of finance, his take on the Consumer Price Index. 8.5%. We talked about this yesterday. Our crystal ball was right. The highest since 1981. Inflation out of control. Judah Whitcower, let me know if you have that 2-shot ready to go. And then get the 3-shot when Alex gets here so we can do the equilateral triangle of content. Judah made a point before the show started about the Federal Reserve essentially unable to get out of its own way for how long, did you say? For an extended period of time.
As long as you or I can remember.
As long as me and Judah can remember, he says. He's exactly right. Jay Powell and the Fed doing it yet again. Can't get out of their own damn way. We'll talk about that with Alex Urpí of Emergent Financial Services. I will ask this question and utilize it as a springboard for content and conversation on the Tuesday edition of the show. If you had $100,000 right now at your disposal, would you utilize that $100,000 by investing it into the stock market or to buy real estate? Over the last, I don't know, call it 2022, certainly. Real estate is at an exponential return on investment clip. You got properties in the Charlottesville city and in Albemarle County and in Central Virginia that have appreciated 40%, people. Some even more than that. You got investment property that is appreciating in value 25, 30, 40%. I'm speaking from firsthand experience here. Investment property appreciating 25, 30, 40%, and rents for those investment properties going up 15 to 30%. So you're winning with the equity appreciation on the back end, and you're winning on the front end with the rent roll appreciation. $100,000, what do you do with it? We'll have that conversation today in the program. A Crozetian has now dropped out of American Idol. My wife sent me this. Scott Aaronworth, the King of Virginia Beach, sent me this. Kennedy Anderson drops out of the competition for personal reasons. We will relay the statement from Kennedy Anderson's Instagram page. Scott Aaronworth, thank you for the screenshot, to you today on the program. She is a superstar. She is the voice of a superstar. She is the personality of a superstar. She has the looks of a superstar. While she has dropped out of American Idol, I do not believe this is the last we will hear of Kennedy Anderson, a talent of generational proportions. All those topics and more on the I Love CVille Show, today presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary. Skooma Boutique Dispensary locations on the downtown mall and on 420, also on Ellwood Avenue to service the UVA quarter. So much to cover on today's program. Let's giddy up and get right to it. Inflation, 8.5%, the consumer price index. The highest it's been since December 1981. Headline CPI in March rose by 8.5% from a year ago. The fastest annual gain since December 1981 and 0.1 of a percentage point above the estimate. Surging food, surging energy, and surging shelter costs helped account for the gain. If there is a glimmer of hope or positivity, it's this. There were signs that core inflation appeared to be ebbing. Core inflation rose just 0.3% for the month, less than the 0.5% estimate. That ebbing of core inflation sparked hope that inflation overall was easing and that March might represent the peak of inflation. We hope to God that's true. I'll ask Alex Urpí that very question. Is this the peak of the pinching of the dollars for us at the tanks, the grocery stores, the restaurants, and the retail outlets? We need the Ukrainian-Russian war to come to an end for humanitarian reasons, for the safety of a country and a nation. We certainly need it to end for recessionary reasons. That topic with Alex Urpí today on the program. Yesterday we had a dynamite show, and the show is archived on ilovecville.com. I encourage you to go to ilovecville.com right now and to watch yesterday's show and to also learn about the Fitzgerald tire listing that we highlighted, and as soon as we highlight something, it goes viral. It went viral yesterday. $1.2 million asking price for an iconic building in Belmont. Keith Smith did a hell of a job this morning on Real Talk. And he said, remember, it's not just the building, it's also the business. You're buying the business as well. It's an important highlight. Thank you, Keith, for doing that. Do I think whoever buys this building, will continue running a used tire business? No. No, I do not. Do I think whoever's going to buy this building is going to remodel it and upfit it for a restaurant or a brewery? Yes. Yes, I do. Do I think whoever buys this building will remodel the building and upfit it for a tap room or a restaurant with potentially considering studio apartments on the second floor? Yes. Yes, I do. Michael Buchensky, friend of the program, did a hell of a job on Real Talk this morning, highlighting the debt service payments on a purchase like this. I think the eventual buyer is going to be a cash buyer. The discussion this morning was a 1031 exchange. When you sell one investment property, you dump that money into another investment property to shelter it from capital gains exposure. It's a 1031 exchange, and it's one of the vehicles of dynamic wealth creation. Also called a Starker exchange. The man, the visionary behind it. This gives you an idea of debt service from Michael Buchensky. A $4 million loan on a 7% interest rate gets you a monthly payment of principal and interest of $26,612,000. A $3 million loan on a 7% interest rate gets you a debt service payment, principal and interest of $19,959. Add another $5K a month for insurance, taxes, and some buffer. If you buy the property at $1.2 million and then you take another 1.8 to upfit it and to do something special with it, your monthly nut ballpark is going to be $25K. Restaurant and brewery on the first level paying $10,000 a month. 6 studio apartments above it at $1,500 a clip get you additional $9,000. 10 plus 9 is $19K. It leaves you a little shy of that $6,000 monthly nut, but it's in the ballpark. This property has massive potential. And it's no secret that the interest is there for purchase. I don't think it's going to last long. Yesterday, we talked about the most iconic properties in the city of Charlottesville. Judah and I went back and forth. You got that 2-shot ready to go?
Yeah.
And a 3 ready to go once the Antonio Banderas of Finance joins the sunset? All right, let's go to the 2. Tell me when that 2 is ready to rock. That mic is hot, and folks can see the dynamic Judah Wickower face. You got that mic ready to go? The 10 most iconic buildings in the city of Charlottesville. Judah, you came out with the most iconic one. However, I'm going to remove it from the list because technically it's Albemarle County. It's the Rotunda. When you think of this area, there's no more iconic piece of property than the Rotunda. The only one that could potentially compete with the Rotunda is Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's house. Both those are in Albemarle County. If I added the Rotunda to the list, I thought your idea was spot on. But if we added the Rotunda to the list, my friend, we would have also had to include Scott Stadium and the John Paul Jones Arena. Those 3 pieces of property, UVA's trophy properties, would have dominated and monopolized the top 5, and frankly speaking, would have been 1, 2, and 3 on this list.
Is there a reason they don't have those properties in Charlottesville proper?
UVA is out, University of Virginia. A lot of folks don't realize this. Much of the University of Virginia is Albemarle County.
Does that save them money?
You know, I don't know the actual reason why. Michael Payne, the city councilor of Charlottesville, has floated a payment in lieu of taxes program. UVA is paying very little to Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville for the real estate holdings they have. Very little. Like a fraction of what they actually should be paying. And Payne has floated, well, we should get more from UVA on these real estate holdings. And what they would pay Charlottesville, if they were able to get more, would pale in comparison to what UVA would pay Albemarle County. Obviously, UVA does not want to do a payment in lieu of taxes program because those payments each year would be for the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, and they would be in perpetuity. We see why they're offering resistance there. Here's my top 10. I want to banter back and forth with you before we get to Alex Urpí and before we get to a Crozetian dropping out of American Idol. My top 10 in order, starting with number 1. Are you ready, J-Dubs? Number 1, the Paramount Theater. Most iconic building in the city of Charlottesville, the Paramount Theater. Number 2, the Monticello Hotel, now home to Court Square Tavern. and studio apartments, studio condos, and larger condos in the city of Charlottesville. Number 3, the Pavilion, the Ting Pavilion. Number 4, the old Monticello Dairy Building, now known as Dairy Market. Number 5, the Frank X Building. Three Notch Brewing Company now. The Frank X Building. Number 6, the Coca-Cola Building.
Oh, that's the one that...
Cardinal Hall.
Yeah.
Number 7, the old Spud Nuts, now Quality Pie. Number 8, infamous number 8, the Dewberry Hotel. Number 9, Fitzgerald Tire, on the market for $1.2 million. We're hearing this is very close to potentially going under contract. Number 10, Boylan Heights, your idea, UVA corner. 1, Paramount Theater. You have the list in front of you?
Yep.
I'm curious of your take. I'm going to rattle off the top 10. 1, the Paramount Theater. 2, the Monticello Hotel. 3, the Pavilion. 4, Dairy Market. 5, the Frank X Building. 6, the Coca-Cola Building. 7, Quality Pie, formerly Spud Nuts. 8, infamous, the Dewberry Hotel. 9, Fitzgerald Tire. 10, Boylan Heights. I am not including the University of Virginia champion or trophy properties, the Rotunda, Scott Stadium, or the John Paul Jones Arena. Those are Albemarle County. This story will be on ilovecville.com later today. Visit the website and visit it quickly. Scott Aaronworth says, why was Wayside Chicken Building left off the list? I think Wayside Chicken is an iconic building. King of content, I love Wayside, or King of Virginia Beach, I love Wayside, but I don't believe it's in the top 10. The Monticello Hotel is the tallest building in the city of Charlottesville. In fact, the Draftsman may be slightly taller, the hotel on West Main, the Draftsman, slightly taller than the old Monticello Hotel, which is home to Court Square now. Judah Wickhauer, anywhere you want to go on this?
I think it's a pretty good list. I mean, there's so much iconic stuff in Charlottesville. I mean, if you've... I think it all just depends on where you usually drive around. You know, I mean, there's so much to point at and say, oh yeah, that's pretty iconic of Charlottesville. But if you don't get around to certain parts of the city, then you might not be as familiar with those. I would almost say the Court Square itself is more iconic than the Monticello Hotel, especially with that classic image of the frontiersman or whatever he was, that the statue that was out in front. But it all depends on your perspective.
Scott Aaronworth, the Cork Hotel will be on there. Georgia Gilmer, Queen of G. There was a rule on the books that nothing could be built taller than the Monticello Hotel. That's true. I believe the Draftsman Hotel on West Main is the tallest building in the city of Charlottesville, slightly taller than the Monticello Hotel. Let me do a quick Google search. What is the tallest building in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia? Enter. I believe the Draftsman is slightly taller. According to this link, I will share this link in the comment section of every Facebook page this show is watching upon. The Draftsman Hotel, I was right. The Draftsman Hotel is 10 floors and 121 feet tall. The Monticello Hotel is 109 feet tall. That's second. The Draftsman is the tallest building in the city of Charlottesville, the hotel on West Main Street. I am putting this in the comment section of every Facebook page so folks can see it and check out the content. In fact, I may turn this into a featured article or story on ilovecville.com. Visit ilovecville.com for a source of tremendous knowledge, my friends. Danny O'Day, DOD, welcome to the program. Woody Finchman, we'll get to your comments as well. Danny O'Day says this, regarding the county for UVA, it was part of the founding of the university. Jefferson tied his personal property directly with the construction of the university, most famously in the statute that there may be no building obstructing the view from Monticello to the rotunda. Good stuff from Danny O'Day right there. Danny, bravo. I relayed this live on air. Woody Fitchman, who's fabulously talented appraiser. Woody, I just realized that we're going to be seeing you soon, and I'm very excited about this. Woody Fitchman. They are non-taxed properties, the UVA holdings. He's very right. What UVA should be paying versus what they actually are paying, very different.
No doubt.
That's why Michael Payne suggested the pilot in lieu of program, the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes program, to help fund a budget, specifically the city of Charlottesville, that was lacking funds in a lot of ways. Let's welcome on LinkedIn, friends of the program, John Blair and Joe Miller. Hello, Joe Miller and John Blair. Check the comment sections on LinkedIn now, John Blair and Joe Miller, for that tallest building ranking that shows what I think is just fantastic knowledge that highlights the tallest buildings out there. Very quickly, number one is the Draftsman Hotel at 121 feet, 2 Court Square, or Monticello Hotel about 109 feet. In fact, there are a handful at 109 feet. You got University Hospital, the new tower, about 109 feet. 1800 Jefferson Park, 109 feet. Lewis and Clark Square, the condo building at the front of the downtown mall, as you head down West Main, is 109 feet. The Doubletree Hotel is Albemarle County. Doubletree Hotel is Albemarle County, 109 feet. The Flats at West Village, that's the big apartment complex on West Main. Corin Capshaw at one time was the owner of this. That's 101 feet. In fact, Corin Capshaw made a killing on the sale of that one. That's 101 feet. So those are your tallest buildings in the city of Charlottesville. Then you got a number of them below 100 feet in height. But the Draftsman at 121 feet has a 12-foot height advantage over the Monticello Hotel 500 Court Square. A lot of comments coming in here that we're going to try to get to. Grayson says this: Jerry, I love the show. It's my source for knowledge on the program. You mentioned Fitzgerald Tire has tremendous activity. Do you think it's going to be under contract this week? I just can characterize it that the activity is significant after what Kara Bass shared on Real Talk this morning. The activity is significant. And I would not be surprised if there was a 1031 exchange that happens for this piece of property, especially with the volatility in the markets. Very quickly, before we get to Alex Urpí, a charming, beautiful, talented young lady is no longer on a national televised show representing Crozet. Kennedy Anderson has dropped out of the American Idol competition. She is citing personal reasons for dropping out. Scott Aaronworth sent me the screenshot from her Instagram page. My wife tapped me on the shoulder and said this should be on today's show as well. For personal reasons, Kennedy Anderson said on Instagram, I am unable to continue on American Idol. This has been one of the hardest decisions I have ever had to make, but I know it is necessary. I'm so grateful to American Idol, the judges, the producers, the amazing contestants, and all the fans who have supported me. Thank you for giving me such an amazing opportunity to share my voice, chase my dreams, feel so much joy and happiness doing what I love, and make lifelong friends along the way. As of this morning, Kennedy Anderson's post on Instagram has over 22,000 people liking it. Let's check what it is now. Kennedy Anderson on Instagram. I'm going to her IG right now to see how many people have interacted with this post, engaged with this post. That's an organic engagement of tremendous proportions. Kennedy Anderson, over 24,000 likes on the post that she did announcing dropping out of American Idol. She has over 124,000 followers. over 124,000 followers. She's got a photo from her from the Dairy Queen in Crozet, the third one, the third image. You look at her Facebook, at her Instagram account, and you see the Cork Hotel rooftop on there. I mean, Charlottesville and Crozet and Albemarle County, well represented by this talented musician. Over 124,000 followers. To put it in perspective, I Love CVille has the third largest Instagram following in Central Virginia. Number 1 is UVA, number 2 is the city of Charlottesville, and number 3 is I Love CVille. We have over 13,300 followers. It's a lot. It's a lot. All right, let's get the Antonio Banderas of finance on the show if we could. Alex Urpí, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, a diehard University of Virginia fan, an aficionado of dynamic local cocktails, of local wine, local beer, local content, a North Star for so many in this community, a champion of the Latino community, a member of how many boards and committees?
2, 3.
I mean, so many he's got to count on his fingers.
At least 4 or 5.
Oh, can you rattle off? And first, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jerry. How you doing?
I'm doing well. We love Tuesdays with you. Can you
Same here.
rattle off the boards you're on?
So I'm lucky enough to be treasurer for Community Investment Collaborative, treasurer for Charlottesville Scholarship Program. Really love being part of that. Treasurer for Minority Business Alliance, as well as president for Forward Adelante.
That's a lot.
So it's a good number.
That is a lot right there. He's also the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. We got to talk CPI, 8.5%.
8.5%.
Highest since December 1981. The show is yours anywhere you want to go.
I mean, it just, we've talked about it before, it just shows that the inflation we're seeing now is very far from being finished. I mean, even though we had a little bit, it looked like a little bit of a reprieve in gasoline prices, there's no denying that just the pressure that is underway already from just already underlying inflation combined with the issues that are going to happen in oil and energy production as well as agriculture from the war in the Ukraine is just, there's too much pressure, upward pressure on prices right now for us to see a reprieve in the general CPI.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. Despite the highest levels of inflation in the last 41 years, the markets responded favorably to this
Today.
KPI today. Mm-hmm. And if there's any sliver of hope, and it sounds like you disagree with this, if there's any sliver of hope, core inflation appears to be ebbing. It rose 0.3% for the month, less than the 0.5% estimation. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that maybe inflation overall is easing.
You take out the food and energy and...
Yeah, with March potentially representing the peak. You buy that.
I mean, that would be great news if it were the case. I mean, my issue, of course, always with core inflation is that it's one of those voodoo numbers that looks great on paper,
It's
but
bogus.
no one actually experiences.
Yeah, explain why.
So, because core inflation takes out food and energy, among other things. And because the theory being those are more volatile and those are things over which the Federal Reserve has less control. So the Federal Reserve tends to look at core inflation as their primary barometer of where they want inflation to be in the economy. My issue with core inflation, of course, is that the actual people who live in this country and go to the store, we don't experience core inflation, we experience actual inflation. We experience whatever milk is up this week, whatever bread is up this month, whatever gas is up in the last 2 months, that's what we actually experience. So while it can be a helpful number perhaps for some policymakers at the Fed, in terms of how it impacts us, it's a number that none of us will ever see, because none of us will ever walk in the store and see everything up by core inflation.
That's why CPI matters more to us.
That's why CPI tends to matter a little bit more. In addition, the one positive here is what we could be seeing is, I don't know if you recall when I was on last month and the month before, PPI, which is the producer price index, was very high. It was running around 9% at the beginning of the year. PPI is what producers face in inflation. So that's the raw materials or middle materials that they are getting that they turn into the products we buy. So if you think about bread, the person making the bread, what they're facing was up 9%, which meant that we could definitely expect around a 9% CPI following that, because they usually pass it on. So the fact that we saw 9 at PPI, we're now seeing 8.5 here, but a slight downtick in core inflation. I mean, it could be that hopefully maybe what we're seeing is a little bit of stabilization here. I would hope that, every time I sit here and hope that the war in the Ukraine is winding down, I come back the next week and it hasn't. Right, but obviously that would go a long way towards relieving some of the pressure, because the challenge we're having right now is what percent of this inflation is what we saw in 2021, continuing those problems, and how much of this inflation is now the Ukraine pile-on. And it's difficult.
It's all the above.
It's all of the above. So
Yeah.
the issue is, until one of those things ends, it's going to be difficult to say, okay, well, this is all attributable to Ukraine now, or this is now, Ukraine is done, this is all attributable to some underlying issue with the economy that's still overheating.
Do you have a 3-shot ready to rock and roll, J-Dubs? Let us
Yeah.
know when is that up?
Yeah.
I mentioned to him the comment you said about the Fed, to Alex Urpí. I'm curious of his take on this. And Nicholas Urpí loves your sweater. He says, nice sweater, bro.
Thank
He's
you.
giving you some proud. It is a nice sweater, right,
It is a
Alex?
nice sweater.
It's a very nice sweater.
As someone who likes
Thank you,
sweaters,
Nicholas.
it's a nice sweater.
It's a nice sweater. So, J-Dubs, mention that comment you said to Alex.
Well, I think I said, what did I say? I said that the Fed has been, the Fed has been,
The Fed can't get out of its own way. It's basically what you said.
basically, and they haven't been able to for as long as you or I can remember.
Your thoughts on that, Alex?
Well, no, I agree completely. And in fact, Xavier just wrote something about similar to this when he does his fixed income commentary for our clients at Emergent, to the line of, here you have the Fed raising rates, supposedly to combat inflation, yet until the very month before they raised rates, they were still buying. So he sat there and said, these are two contradictory things. If inflation is so damaging that you need to raise rates, why are you putting more money into the system until the last minute? And he went through some reasons why this may be. They're a little on the complex side. But in other words, they're still playing some games here, trying to determine how and when they put some arrows back into their quiver. Maybe they're sitting there saying, well, certain things will... His feeling is raising rates has less of a negative impact on the market than cutting off the spigot in terms of buying bonds, right? Which he thinks has a little something to do with it. So you sit there and just say, the Federal Reserve, on the one hand, they're between a rock and a hard place, because they're sitting here saying it's not as though the economy is roaring at some kind of crazy 5-6% GDP number that, we got to rein in the economy. So they really don't want to do anything that damages the economy, because it's not that great. In other words, there's slack for sure. I mean, it's not bad. It's not that we're sitting here facing immediate recession, but no one would look at last year's GDP and say, this economy is overheating, time to tamp down, right?
Yeah.
Didn't the Fed kind of create that rock and hard place?
Because
Well,
you're
they
saying
did.
the printing of the money.
Everything they've done is pretty much like ignored the problem for years and years and years. And yeah, they've been printing money, and now
Gave everybody a boatload of free money.
yeah.
Oh, I think so. I mean, and we've talked about this before, that I think part of the reason the Fed is in this bind is because, as much as their two official mandates are control inflation and keep unemployment low, we all sense that the Fed has added to themselves a third unofficial mandate, which is keep rates low, because the United States government cannot afford for interest rates to rise on their bonds.
But they're going up?
But look how they're going up.
You're saying nominally.
In other words, they're nominal. In other
Yeah.
words,
25 basis points,
If you
50
think
basis
back,
points.
exactly. If you think back to when Volcker killed inflation back in the 80s, he had to raise rates.
Fed chair. Reagan time, Ronald Reagan?
Ronald Reagan time,
Yeah.
end of Carter,
Ronald
Reagan
Reagan.
time.
Yeah.
He had to raise rates all the way. They jacked rates up 9, 10, 11%.
Yeah.
In order to kill inflation. You cannot sit there and say, to kill 8.5% inflation, we are going to raise rates maybe 8 times, which is at 0.25% each time, is a 2% increase in the inflation rate.
Yeah.
You cannot beat 8% inflation with a 2% interest rate increase. Because they're sitting there saying, we want to look like we're doing something, we want to attempt to do something, but we cannot raise rates in any significant measure, A, because of what it'll do to the economy, B, because of the fact, and this is the issue why they didn't raise rates in the past, because you could have made an argument that rates should never have been as low as they were for so long.
The problem is you can't, it's that famous triangle where you cannot have these three things together at the same time. It's like you can have something that's quality, you can have something that's quantity, and you can have something that's cheap.
Pick two of three.
Pick two, but you
Yeah,
can't
can't have
have
three.
all
Can't have
three
all
of those
three.
at the same time. It just doesn't work.
Okay,
and
let's
so
talk-
the Fed, like you said, there's that third thing, and they've been trying to juggle these three things, and they don't fit together.
Because they can't.
Judah Wickhauer, bravo.
That's very good.
I love that. I love when you contribute. Let's talk about this. Inflation is scary out of control, A. I'm concerned about the economy slowing significantly, if it hasn't already done it, which we may be pretty darn close.
I mean, if it has, those are always difficult to know.
In real time.
Basically, in
In
real
real
time.
time, right.
Basically, they found out, I don't know if you always know, like, back in 2011 is when they finally figured out that we had been in recession for like 6 months in 2007 and no one knew it.
Okay. So we have inflation high, potentially a slowed economy, certainly slowed, not where we were pre-pandemic.
No,
That's safe to say.
that absolutely.
Okay. Unemployment, fortunately, right now is not out of control. But if it starts upticking, the word stagflation becomes a true fear. Stagflation, an economic condition that's caused by a combination of slow economic growth, high unemployment, and rising prices. Do we start utilizing that, thinking that, or no?
I mean, I don't think we're there yet.
Because of the unemployment?
Because of the unemployment and the fact that we still are not, see, we're having slow growth coming out of the pandemic, but not negative growth.
Okay.
So I wouldn't go there yet, and the unemployment, there's still a lot of slack. Now, you could question and say, does the unemployment rate look so good because so many people are out of the labor force entirely? In other words, they don't even want to go back to work, they're not looking for work, in which case that's kind of an artificially low unemployment rate. Because the key thing to remember with unemployment rate is the number of people out of work divided by the number of people in the labor force, which is people who are also either working or actively looking for work. So if you have given up looking for work, or you have no intention of going back to work right now, you're not looking for a job, you're not getting unemployment anymore, you're living off your savings or something, you don't show up in that bottom number. We saw this a little bit in 2010, 2011, where unemployment improved, but the economy was still going really slow, and people said, what's going on? Well, it was the number of people who had dropped out of the workforce entirely. They had sort of given up hope looking. And so the labor force participation declines, and then your unemployment rate looks better, but not because more people got jobs, but because more people dropped out of the pool entirely. So you might be seeing a little bit of that, but I think in general, there's no denying that there are more jobs out there than there are people who are unemployed. So you sit there and say, that's not quite the slack or damage that you would expect to see in a stagflation environment. There's still opportunities there, and there's still a little room for growth there.
Okay, great take right there. Here's the next topic I want to cover. Then I want to get to the 100 grand topic that he and I were brainstorming. If you have 100 grand, what do you do with it?
Okay.
You put it in the equities market or you put it into real estate? Okay. I'm going to ask you that question here. Before we get to that, I want to get to the other topic we were brainstorming, Judah. Okay. Dude, fellas, think about this crossroads we're at here. We got the federal, we got Jay Powell and the Fed raising rates. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate has darn near close to 2x. Okay, maybe not quite 2x. We'll say it's like when it's gone from like 3.5 to 5 and a tenth, 5 and a quarter.
Okay, so a little less than,
Okay.
less than 2.
So we're talking a significant increase in 2022 alone. In the last 2 weeks, it's gone up a point plus. In the last 2 weeks, 1 point plus. So explain this little crossroads we're at here, Judah Wickhauer. We got the Fed raising rates at a time America is historically and generationally under-inventoried. So the Federal Reserve raising rates that directly corresponds to, indirectly, directly, however you want to call it, mortgage rates, okay? At the same time, we have such little housing supply that housing prices are getting astronomically out of control from valuations. The Fed is legitimately making it incredibly difficult in an already difficult landscape
To buy a home.
to buy a home.
Absolutely.
Thoughts on that, Judah? Alex, you go first on that.
No, it's absolutely true. And the interest rate is even, you can't forget how bad the mortgage rate part is compared even to the home price part. Because as we talked about last week, the home price that's spread out over, a higher home price that's spread out over 30 years. You combine a higher home price with a higher mortgage rate, and the higher rate is now spread out over 30 years. So you're paying that higher rate for 30 years. So it's a double trifecta there, and don't forget how that then filters down to rental.
Yeah,
Because if you were renting,
the taxes are
you
passed
know,
to the tenant.
I know some people whose rents have been jacked up. You're talking going up $75 a month from last year, which is a lot of money when you multiply that by 12 months,
No doubt.
right? So because of course the rentals know,
$75 a month is probably on the low end around these
which is
parts.
probably on the low end.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and you sit there, you know that as it becomes expensive to buy, it will become more and more expensive to rent because of just how the market works and how that price, those increases trickle down. So it's a tough spot for people who want to, on the buy side of real estate.
That's why I don't, and I'm curious of your take on this. That's why I'm respectful of the man because I understand he's in a no-win position here. Now, granted, he's created this position in a lot of ways. He's made his own bed here. But the dude, and I'm talking Powell, is going to make it more difficult for first-time home buyers to buy a house. He's raising rates at a piss-poor clip that's not actually checking inflation. I mean, what the hell is this? Excuse my language here. What the HE double hockey sticks is this dude doing? At a time where we have no inventory on the housing market, making it, it's like everyone's losing here. Who's winning here? The banks aren't even winning here.
So the banks, no.
The banks aren't winning here.
Remember, the banks make money on the difference between the interest rate
Yeah.
that they are paying and your deposit and what they're paying you in savings.
Right.
Yeah.
So who's winning here?
I mean, I guess if you're a home seller who doesn't need to
It
buy.
ain't Joe Biden. Joe Biden's not winning.
No. I mean, what if you're
Who's winning?
If you have a bunch of excess real estate capital that's not your primary home and you're selling it, I don't know. Because where do you even put it after that?
That's what I'm saying. If you 1031 into Fitzgerald Tire,
Yeah.
who's winning? What's your take on this,
talking about
Howard?
specifically the real estate market?
The whole scenario. Who is winning?
I mean, I would imagine somebody's winning on the spread.
Xavier, are you closer?
stock
Is the
market,
closer watching?
Market makers.
I mean,
Do you think they're? I mean, they're winning.
maybe,
they're
I mean,
always-
depending
they're
on
always-
how much volume there is in the market.
They're always making money. But really, what can Jay Powell do? I mean, like you said, he's pretty much created this, and it's like trying to pack a month's worth of clothes into a tiny little suitcase, and one side keeps popping stuff out. You can't push it all down at the same time. So, he's stuck with these tiny little moves trying to fix, he's stuck like the kid trying to poke his hole in the dam.
Yep.
And then another one pops open, and eventually you run out of fingers.
Xavier is watching. There are a lot of people that are not looking for homes but are being killed by high energy prices. The closer, Xavier Urpi, co-star Today y Mañana.
Yeah, I'd be curious who he thinks also is winning in this environment. Because historically, right, savers benefit from higher interest rates.
Right.
But savers are hurt by inflation.
That's what I'm saying.
Historically, borrowers benefit from inflation because the money you pay back in the future is going to be worth less than the money you got now. But borrowers are hurt by higher interest rates.
Xavier, who is winning? Senor Urpi, we respect you tremendously. The closer, Xavier Urpi, the CFO? CIO of Emergent Financial Services. We've dubbed him the closer, the Mariano Rivera of Finance. Who is winning?
Nobody's winning.
Not right now, no.
I mean,
I mean, we're in an environment where we have seen both bonds and stocks decline
yeah,
in the first quarter of the year.
first-time home buyer.
That is very rare.
I'll take it a
for
step
that to
further
happen.
here. This is creating tremendous appreciation in real estate values. But here's the problem. To enjoy the appreciation of the real estate value, you have to sell your house.
And
And then you're left with the predicament, what are you going to buy?
Exactly.
Because the value gain that you get is going to be eroded by what you buy next, unless you sell in an Albemarle County and buy in Danville. There you could potentially get some delta there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can make the argument that the real estate, and I mean, there's your winner right there. The real estate investor, the landlord.
That's what I say. So I mean, if you're a real estate mogul that you have multiple properties which you do not live in,
Your rents are going up,
Your
and you
rents
don't
are
have
going
to
up.
sell the real estate.
and this, of course, the key is you have to have a mortgage that you got previously
Before the rates
before
started rising.
rates started rising.
Not
So-
associated with prime.
Yeah, exactly.
Not floating debt.
If you have floating debt,
You're screwed.
You might be getting more rent, but now you're paying out more. But if you had fixed rate, I guess if you were a landlord with fixed rate mortgages on all your properties, who is now raking in more rent, you're
You're
doing
the one
better.
that's winning. That's the winner
Yeah, you're
right
the
now.
winner.
That is the winner right now, right? Nicholas Urpí. Politicians win in this environment because they can increase taxes and pay themselves. Pal is winning because he'll take his paycheck as long as he can and then publish a book and go on a speaking tour. Is Pal winning though?
I mean, his name is not
Synonymous with
necessarily-
positivity.
It's not synonymous, with positivity now. But at the same time, Nick's not wrong. They all go on speaking tours and get professorships once they're done with the Federal Reserve.
Vanessa Parkhill, Queen of Earlysville. Who's winning, fellas? This is who's winning, she says. The folks that are winning, the government coffers win when prices and wages and home values go up. More tax revenue for the jurisdictions and the governments.
Well, I
mean-
also remember seeing not too long ago that companies like BlackRock were massively buying up property, and of course, this is before rates start hiking and all the stuff we're talking about now. So they're in exactly the position that you were talking about of who's making money. Once you start, you buy up property and wait for the rent prices to go up.
It's true.
So that leads us to the question we were brainstorming. You have $100K in 2022, Q2 2022. What do you do with $100,000?
What do you do with $100,000? I think it depends.
Real estate or the equities?
Yeah, it depends. I think that for me at this point, the difference depends on your liquidity. If you are going to need the money in the short term, right, then you have to do equity, because obviously you can't get a portion of real estate. Like, you have to hold that real estate, right? If you are sitting there and you have $100,000 that you never intend, like you're good not seeing a return on this for, not pulling this out for 10, 20 years, you're not going to need it, then maybe you go real estate and sit on that, and when the time comes, you sell. Just because equities are volatile right now. I mean, real estate is always a good long-term investment if you can do it. I mean, how many hedge fund guys do you see? They make their billions on like one great hedge fund year, they pull the whole thing out, and then what do? They go become landlords. Because over the long term, real estate is it is a good investment in the long term. The key, of course, with everything with real estate is you cannot pull out 5% of your investment. You either
It's not liquid.
It's not liquid. You either sell the whole building or you don't sell any of it. Right? You did, with rare exceptions. Obviously, if you get rich enough, you have a portfolio that has 100 buildings, you can sell one of them. But point being, for the person with 100,000, you have to be willing to say, I don't need any piece of this money for the next 5+ years.
Danny O'Day, DOD. Who is winning, gentlemen? Large equity funds snatching up rental properties as permanent and ever-increasing revenue streams. Anyone whose office is below the 50th floor of a New York City building is losing.
I mean, he has a good point there, because I know some of these, I think BlackRock was buying with cash.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are wealthy enough to buy real estate
No juice.
outright with cash,
No juice.
you are winning.
Yeah.
Because cash is a bad investment right now, because inflation is at 8.5%. You're losing 8.5%. annually on cash. So you turn your cash into real estate. That's what you want to be doing. So to the extent companies can afford to buy real estate with cash and not have to get a mortgage, you're in good shape.
Judah Wickower, any thoughts you want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And I think a big question is, how did some of these companies that started buying up massive amounts of rental properties with cash, did they know that this was coming?
Oh, the conspiracy theorist and Judah Wickower.
I'm not conspiracy theorizing. I'm just saying, if...
Were they forward thinking enough to be opportunistic? I would say BlackRock certainly did.
Yeah.
And I would also say, like, how many of it's not like none of us saw this coming last year.
No, last year we were like, we're untouchable.
Well, I mean,
right?
last year we were sitting here saying this inflation, let's hope it's transitory.
We were saying it was transitory.
Yeah, I mean, we were like, oh, it looks transitory.
Nobody really thought it was transitory.
I don't know, man. Last year, the speculation was it was associated with labor shortages associated with the pandemic and people not working, so they couldn't produce enough goods, or because they didn't have the labor, they had to raise the rates to pay people more.
The funny part is those things should all still be true.
But what about the Fed printing? How many billions did they? Trillions did they print just in the last year?
Okay,
I mean, come on.
If they hadn't,
did we really think that was not going to have a long-term effect?
If they hadn't have flooded the market with stimulus money, would we have been in the recession during the dregs and depths of the pandemic?
I mean, probably.
It
would. I mean, they literally shut down the economy.
That's what I'm saying. They closed the businesses.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I think what my suspicion is that you had two types of people that out of 2020, 2021, you could either look at that trillions printed and say this will be a repeat of 2009, 2010, where we printed the Fed's balance sheet went from like 0 to 4 trillion, and the inflation didn't go into prices, it went into asset prices. So if you had bet on the stock market saying, well, yeah, that we won't have I don't know if you remember the hyperinflation talk in 2011. Oh my goodness, we're going to have hyperinflation. Well, the inflation ended up just going all into asset prices in the markets. So you didn't see it in terms of what you were buying in the store. This time around, could be some people like BlackRock successfully guessed. Yeah, it's going to be different this time.
It could be that they've seen that since 2009, 2010, we've been heading towards this. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, everybody else has been just looking in a different direction because...
You're saying being under inventoried is what you're saying.
I'm saying after 2008 and all that stuff, like, this pretty much had to come, didn't it? I mean, they've pretty much been holding this off, if I'm not mistaken, for the last, 13, 14 years? I mean, it should have happened the last time.
I mean, we've been, even 2020, I mean, we were a long ways off. Recessions usually come every 10 years. So we had been pushing it.
We
were at 12 years already.
Years.
Pre-pandemic, we were at 12 years. Now we're at 14.
Danny O'Day, if you have $100,000, buy equity in grain producers. 30% of global supply is being burned in the fields of Ukraine as we speak.
That's a risky bet with $100,000, but it's not a bad one.
He also says it's worth remembering a large portion of those labor shortages are the result of hundreds of thousands of working sector deaths. Those workers aren't coming back to those jobs. Is he talking retirement there? Is that what you're talking, retirement, DOD?
I'm not sure if he's talking retirement or...
Technology cannibalizing the jobs?
Yeah, also, I mean, the only difference there is that we know that there is sufficient labor to cover those jobs. In other words, yes, there's 10 million job openings and 8 million people in the unemployment pool, but those 8 could take those jobs, but for whatever reason, people are choosing not to. So they're making certain decisions not to take those jobs. Maybe it's probably because they're holding out for a better one. They think they can get better pay.
Oh, he calls it COVID deaths.
Oh, COVID deaths. Okay, that's what I was wondering if he was referring to. Which, I mean, obviously that's the case for some people, but it doesn't explain the entirety of the 10 million, because we know there's at least 8 million people who can take those jobs. But they're choosing either rationally or for other reasons not to.
Judah, anything? I love the equilateral triangle of content.
Yeah.
For those that don't realize, because they just see our 3 photos on screen, our 3 mugshots on screen, we're in a triangle here. And the cameras are being managed by the dynamic J-Dubs, Judah Woodcower.
See here.
Yeah. What are you sure? Oh, no, you went to the studio
Oh,
camera.
there you go.
The studio camera's back. So we're now looking at the studio camera.
So he's 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, there we go. The photo in the air. There's the equilateral triangle content. I can't wait to see this on screen. There's a 10-second delay. It is on screen now. There we go. Oh, there's Judah's finger. All right, my friend. Today, mañana, Thursday, 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network.
Combination. We're Thursday. First, we're going to have on Iwa Har. She's Crozet Art from the Crozet Arts and Crafts Festival. Going to join us. So a little bit of highlighting some local artisans, and then Amanda and Justin from the Gym CVille are going to be back.
Fantastic.
So they're going to join us, talk about what's new at the gym, what people can expect in the spring. So a good combination of local entrepreneurship coming up on Thursday at 10:15.
I love your show. I love the finance portion of the show. I love the entrepreneurship and the business spotlight of the show. Today, Mañana has done a heck of a job of being the champion of the small and medium-sized business community in Central Virginia. They champion entrepreneurship and business on Today Mañana like no other, like no one else does. I would love, Xavier said BlackRock did not guess. Listen to Fink. BlackRock did not guess. I would love if you guys talked at the topic, who is winning?
Who's been okay? I didn't have to put that on there.
I would love
Talk a little-
and get out the closer's take.
Yeah.
He says, who wins? Non-capitalists. When government controls the markets, they are on the way to eliminating capitalism.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think he's not wrong
I can see
there.
Xavier saying that.
He's not wrong there.
Yeah, I can see that. I love Xavier Urpí. I love Alex, the Antonio Banderas of Finance. Judah Woodcower is our fabulous director. This is the I Love CVille Show, guys, on a gorgeous Tuesday with the Antonio Banderas of Finance himself, Alex Urpí. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. A pleasure as always.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. It's sincerely our pleasure. Judah, you were A+ today. My name is Jerry Miller, guys, and we are back tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. with Real Talk with Scott Mortgage Morris of Ross Mortgage and Keith Smith as well. You guys have a good afternoon. Take care.
That was